Our next game takes us to West Carroll. It doesn't. It takes us to Durand. If we go to West Carroll, we will not see them again.
Welcome back, NUIC football fanatics. We're moving into week 6 on the season here. Last week we all went to the Dakota Lena Winslow game in what we felt was the Northwest game of the week, and unfortunately it just did not play out that way as we thought, did it, Shane?
No, it didn't. You know, we thought it'd be a close game, but it turned out not to be so. Second time this year that Dakota's been held without scoring, and against two top teams that, you know, if you're going to be the top of the conference, you got to put points up on the board, and they failed to do that.
Yeah. As far as Lena Winslow, they did not look anything close to the team that we saw in week 1. They definitely look much more improved, which I wasn't expecting after they had their 3 consecutive games over teams with winless records. But they definitely came out a little bit more aggressive, much more focused and ready to play that game, and they really took it to Dakota on Friday night.
Right. You know, to me it looked like Dakota wasn't really ready to play the ball game, and you know, it was a close game in the first half. Couple play calls different, maybe a punt in the second quarter. You know, things look different going in the half, but you know, that's been a problem for Dakota this year, is giving up a late score before halftime, and it's come back to bite them again.
Right. Some other key games that were big was the East Dubuque Amboy game. East Dubuque coming back to win that game 21-20 on a successful 2-point conversion as time was winding down in the fourth quarter. That was really a must-win game that we saw for both of them to have a shot at that chance at the playoffs, and East Dubuque came out with that one.
Right. We picked East Dubuque. Not a lot of people did, but you know, we think that East Dubuque has something good going here, but things are going to get tougher for East Dubuque, and you know, you looked at had Amboy won that game, you know, they might get to 5 wins, and you know, the playoff points with Aquin would have carried them to the playoffs, and now, you know, they're looking down a tough stretch themselves.
Right, exactly. The rest of the games, there really wasn't many close games like we thought there would be.
Right.
We thought there was going to be a couple more, but really, it was pretty much a runaway anywhere you looked at the week. I guess the closest game would have been the Polo Warren game, which was a 2-touchdown win for Polo.
Right, and there early on Friday night, we noticed, you know, there were some closer games than what we thought. You know, Galena was beating EPC, and West Carroll was beating Forreston, you know, but...
And Aquin and Orangeville was even at a 7-6
You know,
game.
we thought, hey, maybe something's in the water tonight, but, you know, things finally played out and went the way we thought they'd go.
Yeah. So we'll move ahead and give you our matchups going into week 6 here. All right, our first game is going to take us to the Northwest Division, where we have the Amboy Clippers visiting the Lena Winslow Panthers. Amboy comes into the game with a 2-3 record after they lost that game last week to East Dubuque 21-20, while Lena Winslow comes in at 4-1 after that impressive 35-0 win over Dakota. Some highlights on what I see in this matchup. Amboy really has not been as good as they expected to be coming into this season. And things really aren't going to get any easier for them moving forward either. What do you think?
No, you know, originally looking at the schedule when all the schedules came out and we decided what our games of the week would be, what we'd cover, you know, we had this matchup circled, but it just hasn't panned out for Amboy to this point. You know, Lena Winslow's turned the corner. They're improving every week. You know, Amboy does have a tough stretch, like Kyle said. You know, they got Lena Winslow, and then they host EPC. You know, looking at how the records are now at 2-3, you got to kind of figure out how you're going to steal one of those games, and I just don't see it this week, and I don't see it moving forward either.
Yeah, they need to steal that game, and then they still have 5-0 Aquin there sitting in week 9. I mean, really looking forward, I see one game that would probably be a for sure win for Amboy. But outside of that, they're going to have to pull off an upset in order to get into the playoffs.
Right, and as far as Lena Winslow's concerned, you know, you're coming off a high win. You got to keep the intensity up. It's easy to get up for Dakota and then fall into a slump thereafter. But, you know, I saw some good things that Lena Winslow did on Friday night, and I think there's plenty there that they can still improve on and build upon, though.
Oh, yeah, and I mean, when I watched Lena Winslow in week 1, they looked like a depleted team.
Right.
A team that... in all honesty, I saw struggling to get to 5 wins just to make the playoffs. But they won 3 in a row, against winless opponents, which really that's hard to judge based off of what you're doing. You expect them to win them games.
Exactly.
But then they came into Dakota looking like a whole different animal, and that really set the tone for them moving forward, especially as they got another critical matchup themselves coming up in Forreston next week.
Right. There again, it's going to be another game that they're going to have to get up for. It'll be kind of like that Dakota atmosphere, only I'm 100% sure that Forreston's going to put a better product on the field than what Dakota did Friday night. But as far as the Amboy-Lena Winslow game, I just don't see Amboy playing with Lena Winslow at this point.
I don't either. I think Lewin is going to win this game, and it's going to be by a couple scores.
Our next game this week of the Northwest Division sees the Pecatonica Indians at 0-5 heading to play the Galena Pirates at 0-5. Both teams are winless in this matchup. What do you think about this, Kyle?
Well, really, as far as both teams, this is a game where both of them can see themselves getting a victory here to get in that win column. It's a good stepping stone going into next season, as both are officially eliminated from any type of playoff contention.
Right.
So from here, you can only look up. As far as that goes, Pecatonica continues to struggle, but they have a chance to get that first win. They just need to keep building off of that. As far as Galena, they're also in search of their first win, what has been a very disappointing season based off of who they have coming back, what they've done the past few years, and I think a lot of it stems from their fallout last year in the playoffs.
Right. That was a disappointing loss to Stockton. What was it, 34-2?
Yes.
Ourselves included. Nobody saw Galena losing that game. We thought they had the better team, and it's kind of been a hangover effect, I feel, for the Pirates this year. They're 0-5. We definitely didn't see that happen. We thought they could very well be one of the 4 top teams of the Northwest Division to win, but here they are, like you said, 0-5. They're eliminated from playoffs, and they find themselves playing a meaningful game against another 0-5 team to decide who goes 1-8 and 0-9. Because I don't see another win possibility for either one of these teams moving forward based on the way they've played to this point in the season.
Looking ahead at their schedule, Galena may get one more win against Warren next week. That could be a possibility, but outside of that, I don't see them winning another game. As far as Pecatonica, I don't see them either getting another win this year. So really, this game is going to decide who's going to win to get one win on the year.
Right. So, but to this point, I do think that Galena has better things to build on as far as getting a victory in this game. I got to take the Pirates.
Yeah, I like Galena in this one as well. Our next Northwest game takes us back to Dakota, where they're going to host the EPC Wildcats. EPC comes in this game at 5-0 after their 49-23 win over Galena, while Dakota comes in at 3-2 after their 35-0 loss to Lena Winslow last week. I tell you what, Shane, EPC really continues to dominate since that week one win over Lena Winslow, and they're just taking the area by storm, in my opinion.
Right. To this point of the season, we talked about Galena in the last segment. We thought they'd be better than what they are. We didn't think EPC would be at 5-0, and we didn't think Dakota would be at 3-2. So out of those 3 teams, EPC has really impressed me in the way that they've done what they've done the most. I mean, this is definitely a team nobody saw at 5-0. Nobody saw them beating Lena Winslow in week 1 and going on a little roll. West Carroll, Peck, Polo, Galena, not necessarily the toughest stretch of schedule. We thought that this week might be a little bit of a test for the Wildcats, but at this point, I'm not sure. A lot of it depends on which Dakota team shows up.
Yeah, I was highly disappointed in the lack of effort that Dakota put on the field last week.
Right.
They tackled very poorly, and there were quite a few times where I watched them give up on plays, specifically a touchdown run that was eventually called back, but Dakota players had stopped even going after the play, complaining to the refs about a flag getting thrown. You just cannot give up on plays like that and expect to win.
Right, and that was at the 35-yard line. We were standing on the sidelines. You can hear kids complaining. The play's still going on. You got to finish the play because, you might feel like you have a block in the back, but that could have been a face mask for all we know.
Yeah, exactly. You got to keep going. I mean,
the thing that really stuck out to me was, we got there and we watched the warm-ups, and Dakota came out fired up, and somewhere along that 20 minutes from coming out on the field to actually playing, they just lost all focus.
Yeah, they look lost. That definitely needs to be corrected in order for them to have a chance in this game. I like where EPC's going. They have the right attitude coming in. We mentioned it last week, the week-to-week attitude.
Right.
We're just taking that mentality level, building our confidence, and I see this as another confidence booster for EPC. I think EPC wins this game big.
Right, and I would agree with that. I'll go out on a limb here and say that EPC is going to blow the doors off Dakota, because I just don't see that Dakota rebounds well. The only thing that stops EPC, in my opinion, in this game is if they come in overconfident. Yeah, like I said, I like EPC by a lot.
This takes us to the Upstate Division, where our first game will feature the AFC Raiders traveling to Orangeville to take on the Broncos. AFC comes into the game at 2-3 after their 48-8 win over Durand last week, while Orangeville comes in at 1-4 after their 40-6 loss to Aquin. In this game, AFC is looking to complete part 1 of 3 to get to that 4-win mark before heading into week 8 to face Polo. Part 2 is this week in what is really another must-win game for the Raiders. What do you see on this one here, Shane?
Right. On paper, you'd think that AFC could get a victory here and, like Kyle said, maybe make that Polo matchup in week 8 mean something and hopefully get to 5 wins and watch Forreston carry them into the playoffs with the points. But, Orangeville does have some athletes. Their quarterback can throw the ball over. Orangeville is a very good 1-4 team. They played Aquin tough for a while. Outside of that Milledgeville game, and a couple others, Orangeville has some good things going for them. I wouldn't be surprised if Orangeville gave AFC a game or even beat them for that matter.
Yes and no. Orangeville did play tough against Aquin. They do have that big win against Warren. There were other games that they, between like Stockton and Milledgeville, right, where they were just completely out of their
right
league. They do need to keep getting better. People are noticing at the improvements that the Broncos have made, but they need to stick to playing four-quarter football.
Right.
As far as beating AFC, I don't see that as a possibility. I think AFC's just got a little bit more talent than Orangeville, but I do like Orangeville's chances at putting points on the board, but I feel AFC wins this game.
And I would agree with that. And like I said, weeks past, Orangeville's success solely relies on their offensive line play. You give a guy enough time to throw the ball and he can put it where he needs to. It's just whether that offensive line can hold. But I agree with you. I like AFC in this matchup.
All right, that'll take us over to our next game in the Upstate, where we see Aquin coming in at 5-0, taking on River Ridge, who comes in at 0-5. Aquin won last week 40-6 over Orangeville, while River Ridge lost last week 36-6 to Milledgeville. Aquin keeps putting up the wins. What do you think on that?
Right, Aquin playing the schedule they have, played a close game against Milledgeville, close game against Warren, but, they keep on getting the wins, and I don't see that changing this week. To me, Aquin officially clinches a playoff spot going 6-0 this week against River Ridge.
Well, and they need to stay focused to not have a hiccups. That way
right,
they can clinch that playoff spot. But I see that as a very good scenario taking place. River Ridge did find themselves on the scoreboard for the second week in a row, which is great. But they still haven't been able to put it all together. I don't see them being able to put it all together this week either against Aquin. I think Aquin will be heavily favored.
Right, and you look at Aquin's schedule going forward. This is the last game where you feel like you can just tally up the win. They still have to play Polo, Stockton, and then they finish the season with Amboy. Those are 3 quality teams. Even though Amboy, is sitting at 2-3, that's a game that Amboy could win. So for Aquin, you got to get to 6 wins so that you can play Polo, Stockton, Amboy tough and give your chance to go 6-3, 7-2, 8-1, whatever the deal might be.
Right, absolutely. But Aquin this week clinches that playoff spot.
Correct.
Alright, this game takes us to Stockton, where they are going to play host to the Warren Warriors. Warren comes in to the game with a 1-4 record after losing to Polo last week 42-28, while Stockton comes in at 5-0 after another 52-0 win over Pecatonica. You look at Warren's 4 losses. Let's start there. They keep missing opportunities on beating opponents that they can beat. You look at them 4 losses, and they're by a touchdown average, which tells me that during every one of these ball games, they just don't know how to finish a ball game. And looking forward on their schedule, it's pretty much tough sledding from here.
Yeah, you look at Warren's schedule. They played tough against Aquin. They played tough against AFC. They lost to Orangeville. This is a team that right now is 1-4, but feels like they should be 5-0. This game looks bad on paper for Warren, but if they're playing tough and in every game, this might be closer than people think. I still like Stockton in the matchup, don't get me wrong. But like you said, Warren's been in every game. They feel like they should be getting close to that playoff clincher, but after this week, I don't see how Warren continues. After this week, Warren goes to 1-5, in my opinion.
Yeah, and with Warren going to 1-5, that does eventually take place. That would eliminate them from the playoffs. As far as Stockton goes, though, you look at them, they're beating opponents at a 54-1 clip. They're giving up less than 2 points a game. They've scored 272 points on the year, averaging that 54 points per game. I just don't see a way where Warren will keep the high-flying Blackhawks from getting to that win. Warren's going to score. I don't see Stockton getting another shutout. They've had 4 on the year. They've only given up 6 points to Polo, but I don't see Warren not getting on the board against Stockton. That would be a surprise to me if Stockton gets a shutout in this game.
Right. And Stockton, don't get me wrong, Stockton's a great team. We have them projected at 9-0. You look at Stockton's 5 wins. They come against a 1-win team of Orangeville, a 0-win team of River Ridge, a 3-win team in Polo, a winless Durand team, and a winless Pecatonica team. I want to see.
So outside of Polo,
they haven't played
no
anybody.
playoff teams and 1 win.
Exactly. Like I said, this is the schedule they play. This is the schedule that's put in front of them. Stockton can't do anything about that. But I'm not going to jump on board the Blackhawk train until I see them actually beat a quality opponent.
Yeah, that probably won't happen until week 8 when they play Aquin.
Right.
But this game, I got Stockton winning big once again for the 6th week in a row, clinching their playoff spot.
And I don't see any reason to disagree with that.
So our crossover game takes us to Durand this week, where they're hosting the West Carroll Thunder. West Carroll comes in this game at 1-4 after their 26-6 loss to Forreston last week, while Durand comes in at 0-5 after they lost to AFC 48-8. Looking at West Carroll's schedule being 1-4, where we thought that they would be better this year, they have some very winnable games over the next 3 weeks in Durand, East Dubuque, and Galena, in hopes of making that Week 9 matchup with Lena Winslow a meaningful game that could potentially get them into the playoffs. The only problem with that is I have them projected at 36 playoff points as a 5-4 team. That could be below the cutoff. We're right at the cutoff this year. If it plays out that way.
Right. The schedule didn't do West Carroll any favors. We lost South Beloit. We had Amboy. We knew that would add some competition, and unfortunately for the Thunder, they lost that game against Amboy, whereas last year that was a win against South Beloit. West Carroll can beat Durand. They can beat East Dubuque. They can beat Galena. And who knows, maybe by week 9, an injury here or there, game plan, you're playing your best. Maybe you give Lena Winslow a game. However, I think East Dubuque will also have something to say contrary to that. East Dubuque is a good team that is improving week in, week out, so it's not a foregone conclusion that week 9 matchup even means something. However, West Carroll has not drawn very good on their schedule at this point. We thought they'd be better, but that was also considering the fact that we thought EPC wouldn't be very good, and they've come out to a 5-0 start. So that right there takes a win away from West Carroll. Then they went to Amboy and lost as well. Or actually, I think that was at West Carroll, well, if I'm not mistaken.
No, they did go
They
to
did
Amboy.
So, those are two games that you looked at the schedule when things first came out and you thought that, hey, maybe West Carroll is 2-1 before they played Peck, get to that 3-1 before they played Forreston, but things didn't go the way that West Carroll thought. But like you say, 5-4 unfortunately does not probably get West Carroll in with this week's matchup alone being Durand. I like them in this game. I like them moving forward up until that Week 9 matchup against Galena Winslow, but unfortunately, at 5-4, it's still not good enough.
Right. It will be tough. West Carroll needs to get there first, obviously.
Right.
I agree that game against East Dubuque is going to be a tough one because for East Dubuque to make the playoffs,
They need that.
that's also going to be a must-win game for East Dubuque. As far as Durand, they've had a really rough season. They just need to focus on getting better. They got a couple big games coming up with Orangeville and River Ridge that will be really tough matchups for them. Games that they could possibly even
Chance to get in the
into the victory column.
Which
so
might help West Carroll too. So, if you're West Carroll, after you beat Durand, you're a big Durand fan again in those
Yes.
two matchups where you really hope the Bulldogs can get you a couple playoff points.
Durand gets those 2 points.
You never know.
West Carroll gets it at 5-4. That moves them up to 38 playoff points.
You're right on the doorstep there.
Yes. So that is huge benefactor for West Carroll is Durand to win those 2 games.
But I do like West Carroll in this game. I just think that they're too much for the Bulldogs at this point. West Carroll played Forreston tough last week. I think that that's something they can build on moving forward.
Yes, I see this as a West Carroll win too, in their steps to getting the 4-4 going into Week 9. Our Northwest game of the week is going to take us up to East Dubuque, where they're playing host to the Forreston Cardinals. Forreston comes into this matchup with a 5-0 record after their 26-6 win over West Carroll last week. And East Dubuque comes in with a 4-1 record after their 21-20 come from behind win over Amboy. Looking down, you look at Forreston, 5-0, right on pace where we thought they would be. They've only given up 26 points on the year, which is less than a touchdown a game. On top of that, they're scoring at a 37-point-per-game clip. You see any way or anybody in the conference get in the way of Forreston and their run to 9-0?
I have no reason to believe that anybody will. We look at Galena Winslow, we look at EPC, we look at this week in East Dubuque. I don't think any of those teams really stand a chance against Forreston. I will go on record here and say that this is one of the best 1A football teams I have seen in the past several years. Forreston just has way too much going for it. Outside of their speed, they got 6 or 7 guys that at any moment can break it off. They run that high-powered, fast-tempo offense. They keep guys coming in and out. Everybody's fresh. Christensen gets the outside, he's gone. They got a bruiser that can go up the middle. There's really not, and like you've said in weeks past, they can pass the ball if they have to. And defensively, they haven't given up anything, like you said. I don't see anybody beating Forreston at this point, and I don't think there's any reason to believe that East Dubuque really challenges them in this game.
Yeah, I don't see this as being a very big challenge. As far as East Dubuque, they've really been a surprise to this point in the season for a lot of people outside of themselves. But Forreston is a different animal than any of the previous 5 teams that East Dubuque's played. And you even look at the one loss East Dubuque has, it was to Dakota. And you just saw what Dakota did on Friday against Galena Winslow. This East Dubuque team has a hard road ahead of them. They have Forreston, West Carroll, Lewin, and EPC. So, really, the way I see it for East Dubuque to make the playoffs, next week, Week 7, that West Carroll game, they need to win that game. Because I don't see them getting by Lewin, EPC, or Forreston.
And the thing that really concerns me for East Dubuque that we haven't really talked about is they're another team that, hey, 5-4 probably doesn't get them in either, with their crossover being Orangeville.
Actually, I think they could. I see them at a potential of 38 playoff points, just based off the fact that the Northwest side will carry 8 playoff points because the only win is Stockton over Pecatonica.
Right. So, and there again, if that could also change as far as if West Carroll gets a couple victories out of Durand, another team that gets up to that 38 playoff point, providing West Carroll wins their matchups, the more teams that the certain playoff points, eventually there's a team with the same amount of playoff points that could miss the playoffs.
Well, there you go. If West Carroll gets playoff points out of Durand, that means East Dubuque's not getting those points out of Orangeville.
Right.
So it's kind of a balancing act between those two schools. So they got a lot to play for there in Week 7. Granted, you look at East Dubuque and they're sitting there saying, well, we're 4-1, guys. You're 4-1 with the hardest part of your schedule coming up.
Correct.
Right? And I don't see it as favorable matchups for you. But
we've been proven wrong.
We've been proven wrong already.
To this point.
We're only voting games at a 77% clip, which I would take them odds in Vegas. But at the same token, that means we've been wrong. I don't think anybody can be right every week, and we had to eat ours last week with our one bad pick. Whoop-de-doo.
Yep.
So I like Forreston big in this game.
I have no reason to disagree. I think that Forreston comes out hungry after last week's showing against West Carroll and really takes it to the Warriors.
This takes us to our upstate game of the week, where we have the Milledgeville Missiles visiting rival Polo Marcos. Milledgeville comes in a game at 4-1 after the 36-6 win over River Ridge last week, as Polo comes into the game at 3-2 after their 42-28 win over Warren. For Milledgeville, they only need one more win to make them playoff eligible and 2 more to reach the show. If they were to go 5-4 right now, they're looking at a projected 38 points if they only get the one more win. Whereas if they get the 2 more wins, get 6-3, it doesn't matter because they're going to automatically be in. As far as Polo, in my opinion, they really control their own destiny here. Granted, they're only 3-2. But their next 4 weeks are pretty manageable games, in my opinion, based off of who they have. But they still need to get 2 more wins as well to be eligible. And at 5-4, they should definitely be in. Right now I have them projected at 40 playoff points. But they still have tough games, as they have Milledgeville, AFC, and Aquin, and then of course that game against Orangeville.
And for me, I'll say it now that this is a potential must-win for Milledgeville. I mean, they're sitting at 4-1. I'm picking them to win this game. But if they don't win this game, that puts them at 4-2. They still have Stockton. They have Dakota, and they have a Warren team that has been in every game they've played. This has last year written all over it, in my opinion. This is a must-win for Milledgeville, in my opinion. However, I'm going to take Milledgeville because I think they are the better team than Polo. I think Milledgeville can actually play with Dakota. Based on what I saw against Orangeville, I know that Orangeville didn't give them a best game, but Milledgeville did some nice things that I think would work in that matchup. But Milledgeville has to take care of this game first and potentially get to that second victory somewhere in the schedule so they don't have to worry about playoff points. But if they lose this game, it could be a snowball effect for the Missiles.
Yes, and we saw this as kind of a lining in the sand, so to speak. We knew that Milledgeville had to be 4-1 after Week 5. Well, we're going into Week 6. Guess what? They're at 4-1. They're exactly where they need to be, that we said that they needed to be. Now it's time to take care of business. You got 4 weeks. You got 4 games. 2 of them are going to be tough. 2 of them are going to be manageable. It's time to get the job done. I like Milledgeville in this game as well. So that brings us to the end of our Week 6 matchups and previews. We hope you enjoyed the show. Where are you going this week, Shane?
Well, hopefully it turns out to be a better game than last week, but I'll be in Dakota watching EPC take on the Indians.
I think we're going to join you for that game.
Really?
Yes. Unfortunately, the game of the week is up in East Dubuque.
Right.
We don't have enough time to get up there.
Exactly.
Otherwise, that would most likely be where we're going. So we will also be coming to Dakota to do another week with all 3 of us together. We hope we see you guys out at the games. Remember to always root for the NUIC.